This 2023 Honda HRV marks only the second time the subcompact entry crossover at Honda has gotten a fully new generation. And it's thanks to my friends at Rust Arrow Honda for letting me have a go. So let's jump in and see how this little guy has grown up. Simply looking at the new HRV, you can kind of tell this thing has been to finishing school, but let's stick with our typical formula here and talk about the drive first. Of course, under the hood here you have no longer the 1.8 liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder, but what you have is a 2-liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder, and what it makes is 158 horsepower and 138 pound-feet of torque. All that power goes through a CVT transmission, and it's not exactly like it's going to win any drag races, but based on my experience so far, it feels perfectly adequate and perfectly peppy for what this thing is. It suits the personality of the car. You can option Honda's real-time all-wheel drive with intelligent control on any trim for $1,400 if you'd like. And in the Yeti's armpit of Wisconsin, I might recommend it. As we talk about power, it's easy to get distracted by big horsepower numbers. But if I were shopping for an HRV, I'd care a little bit more about fuel economy. And even with the bigger engine here, you still get 25 mpg city and 30 mpg highway. Now, if you go for the front wheel drive cars, you get a little bit better. You get 26 mpg city and 32 highway. But you will get a couple toys that help maximize your fuel economy, such as your active eco, your eco assist button, as well as an eco mode in your drive selector. It's also worth mentioning that you will get a snow mode as well as a normal mode in your drive selectors, and of course that will adjust your throttle sharpness, your CVT ratios, and your all-wheel drive torque distribution if you expect all-wheel drive, of course. But there's one thing that you also have, and that's an S mode on your transmission. And this being a Honda, it's expected to be a little more dynamic behind the wheel than a comparable Toyota. So let's see if the new, bigger HRV can still give you a little fizz. Now, 158 horsepower and 138 pound-feet of torque don't sound like huge numbers, but real drivers know that there's a lot more to a car's performance than horsepower and 0 to 60. This HRV is under 3,500 pounds, so it doesn't need a huge amount of power to push it along. The steering is quick, it's accurate, and it has a decent feel and feedback from those front tires. Again, this is built on the Civic platform, which is a nice little chassis to kind of get the most out of a car from a robust handling perspective. And finally, what this thing has is a strut front and a multi-link rear suspension setup. And for those of you that don't exactly know what that means, I'll put it this way. It's a very sophisticated suspension system for something of this price point. The Mazda CX-50, which is tens of thousands of dollars more than this thing, has a less sophisticated suspension setup than this HRV. A Mazda, the Zoom Zoom brand, and this has better suspension. A little bit better ride too. No, this isn't a sports car, and you shouldn't think of it that way. However, when you look at something like the CHR or Corolla Cross, that's still water, whereas this HRV is sparkling when you want it to be. The power is perfectly adequate for the personality of the car, the ride and suspension are smooth and well damped, and the experience is something much better than I would expect from the entry point to a brand's SUV lineup. So with that, let's step outside and talk about some important updates. Okay, so behind the wheel, the new HRV, at least in the second gen here, feels like it's just got a little bit more oomph. It's got a little bit more substance, a little bit more quality than something you're used to experiencing in this segment. Now, this thing is now riding on the new Civic platform, which is a good thing. We talked about that behind the wheel, but there are some pretty serious modifications that have been made for the HRV. This thing is 8.7 inches longer than it was previous gen, and it's 2.6 inches wider. So it is a comprehensively larger vehicle. My friend over over at Rustero, who is kind enough to loan us this car for this video today. He has a 2010 CRV, and this thing is about the same size. So this has gone quite a bit up in size. You've got a lot more room, and that translates to the interior, which we'll get to, but it also is going for a more upmarket, more mature, more elegant feeling to it, and you can kind of tell with the design, and that goes with the Civic as well. There's a lot less going on from a stylistic perspective to give it a more mature look to it. Now this white pearl paint Honda does so well, especially with these polarized sunglasses on. I have the lens polarizer on the camera right now, so I hope you can see it, but there's so much metal flake and dimension to it. Very simple, easy creases down the hood, coming up to your kind of like mouth style grille. Personally, if it's my choice, the European or the overseas version of this car is a little bit better looking, at least in my opinion, but that's just subjective. This still looks pretty handsome. You've got completely LED running and headlights and projectors across all your trims, which is fantastic. This is kind of a more satin, more matte finish to your grille. In the EXL, it'll be gloss. But then down here on your lower fascia, you still have the Mr. Krabs claws here, and this is actually functional aerodynamics here, guys. This is bringing air around the front of the car over that high pressure area behind your wheel. And then of course you've got some cooling down here in your lower fascia as well. This being a sport trim, you have some of these black accents, and we'll start to talk about that as we get around the side of the car as well. So as we come around the side of the car, one of the things that you'll notice if you're watching other HRV videos today is Honda wants you to be able to take this thing off-road. So you've got some little black cladding across your wheels. This is again, is a sport trim, so you get these bigger 18-inch black gloss wheels. They look fantastic, wrapped in all-season tires. The EXL, your up trim, gets 17 inches. So if you go to the Sport, you get the 18-inch, looks pretty cool. Around the side, again, we talk about the black accents. You've got your black wing mirror. This is heated in Sport and EXL trims. You've got your black window treatments around the side. You have, again, your kind of continued plastic cladding around your side skirt rocker panel, as well as your rear wheel arch as well, because you have to protect yourself from rocks and chips and things like that. And one of the biggest changes for this second generation is you have a full-size normal rear door. You're no longer grabbing a grab handle up here on your C-pillar. You have a full-size normal door. And we'll talk about back seat space in a minute. Now, one thing you'll notice here is there is no sunroof. That is only for the EXLs, so no sunroof up here. Again, you got your black wheels down here. You've got a black roof spoiler over your hatch. You've got your white shark fin, body colored as well. And then again, fully and comprehensively LED taillights across the range. That's pretty impressive to see. You get your Honda badge, all-wheel drive underneath your little windshield wiper. HRV is in chrome on the left-hand side, but you've got a blacked out sport badge on the right-hand side. Completely black lower bumper and fascia with a little bit of chrome, and then a single outlet exhaust on your right-hand side. Overall, I think it's a nice spec. I always kind of like these Stormtrooper Domino specs with the white and the black, but let's jump inside and talk about that. And then on the interior, the Civic similarities continue here. Not only is it riding on the same chassis, but you also have a very Civic style dash. You have the kind of air vent design that goes across the entire dash. Of course, it doesn't completely go across the passenger side, but it does have a very kind of Audi look to it. Audi did that a number of years ago, so it does have a very mature and upscale look to it. I do like that. Personally, okay, so this sport trim has the cloth seats. You'll also get cloth in the base LX. The EXL, you will get leather, but these cloth seats I think are kind of cool. They're like a heathered black with like a lighter gray kind of spotting to it, and then you've also got this kind of like woven insert here on your center portion of your seat, and then of course you've got orange stitching, and that continues across your dash, on your center console, and your door cards. And to be honest, it's speckled in here with soft touch leathers, some softer touch upper door card areas, and it's honestly very impressive from a build and a fit and finish, and some of the materials that you get in here, especially considering this is kind of the mid-grade, the sport, not even the range topper. So personally, I like the personality of the cloth upholstery here with some of that extra accenting. Another thing I like in this thing is the fact that you get 3-level heated seats up front. You get that in the sport trim here, as well as the range topping EXL. In terms of some of the technology that you get a 7-inch screen as base for your infotainment system. You can upgrade to a 9-inch screen in the EXL trim. You will get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard across the range, but it will be only wireless in the EXL trims. You do not get a 360 camera. Personally, that's not surprising here. The backup camera that you do have is very solid. It's got a good resolution. Even in, these higher, midday, harsher sunlights, you can still see everything pretty well. You get a semi-digital gauge cluster. It's kind of interesting the way that they've done this. Some manufacturers choose to go with like the middle section digital and then some, auxiliary gauges to be analog, but your speedometer on the right-hand side is analog, and then the tachometer is digital on the left-hand side, and you can do a little bit of customization here and there. Then jumping back down into your climate controls, you do have automatic climate controls. It's single zone for the sport trim. It'll be dual zone in your EXL, but you do get automatic climate controls up here, which is really, really nice here today. You do get ambient lighting in the EXL, so you don't have it here, which is a little bit of a bummer. It would be kind of cool to see some orange ambient lighting here to accent the stitching, but it's still cool to be able to get it in this thing at the range topper. In terms of some of the space in here in storage, you do have a cubby in front of your cup holders. You have dual cup holders up here. They are too small for my emotional support water bottle, but interestingly enough, the way that they're positioned is in front of the gear selector and kind of almost under the vents. So if I take a corner really hard, it's gonna fall out, but I can put my water bottle in here and it will rest on the walls. You also have a redesigned center console. So that's where the similarities for the Civic are up in your upper dash, and then when you get down to your center console, this is very HRV specific. So you have your gear selector here, it's a mechanical linkage, you've got your drive mode button, hill descent, parking brake, brake hold, and then you have like almost a tunnel underneath where you have a little storage cubby for a phone. You've got USB-A over on your left and on your right as well. You will get USB-Cs in the EXL range topper, so a little bit faster charging. And then next to you, of course, you've got a pretty deep center console here, no additional charging, because you've already got 3 USBs in front of you there. Then taking a look upwards, again, we don't have a sunroof in here. That's reserved for the range topping EXL, but really quick, I want to touch on something that we're seeing here. The steering wheel, again, is very Civic in its design. It is gloss black for the sport trim, but it's got a nice orange accented stitching on the inside of the rim. It's a good size. I like it. It's got your media controls on the left, and it's got your kind of Honda sensing and your adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, and that sort of thing on your right-hand side. This is a pretty robust system, pretty comprehensive system for something at this price point, so I'm very impressed here. But then as we start to talk about the rear seats, this is kind of the main event. This is something that I know everyone's gonna be wanting to hear. You don't get the crazy magic seat that flips up anymore, but they do fold 60-40 and they fold like totally flat. The lower portion of the seat does kind of jut forward to allow the upper part of the seat to kind of fold into it a little bit more. So it makes the best use of the space without it being the magic seat from the Fit platform that we were used to from last gen. As far as space goes, it's way bigger. It's really spacious. Myself at 6'1", I can fit behind myself totally comfortably. It is not a concern at all. I'm really impressed with the packaging for the rear seat. That's where that added wheelbase, or that added length overall, that almost 9 inches of length, really translates to a bigger back seat, and it's really, really nice. You don't get rear seat air vents or chargers or even necessarily a cup holder from your center seat folding down, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but you still have a very spacious seat back there that's totally usable even for adults. Another thing that's kind of nice is you do have on Sport and EXL trims the kind of walk away auto locking. So if you forget to lock the car and you walk away, the car will sense that the key is no longer around the vehicle and then it'll lock itself, which is really nice. You don't have a power lift gate in the back. Again, not something I expect in this class, but you do have a 25 cubic foot trunk, which is pretty nice, pretty spacious with the seats up. Fold it down and you get something like 55 cubic feet. Again, you have more storage underneath the trunk floor, and again, it's a fold flat, so if you wanted to go camping in here, you could. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty impressed with the packaging. It's a really nice interior. The build quality is there, the fit and finish is there, the design, some of the personality with the seats and the upholstery. I'm impressed, and with that, I think we get into the final thoughts. So that's the new Honda HRV. It's a dramatic change from the previous in terms of size and upmarket philosophy without the upmarket price tag. Generally speaking, I'm impressed with the new HRV, but if I had one thing to complain about, it's the hybrid elephant in the room, or lack thereof. In fairness, last year Toyota rolled out their Corolla Cross, and then we didn't get the hybrid until this year. So fingers crossed, we get the HRV hybrid next year. But even without a hybrid, at $23,650 starting, it's a decent amount of car for the money. So thanks again to Jeff and Rustero for letting me have a go.